There is a voice in your head talking right now. Perhaps it just said, "What voice?" I don't hear any voice. That, of course, was the voice. It is speaking almost constantly, commenting on this, judging that, replaying yesterday's conversation, rehearsing tomorrow's. And most people are so identified with this voice, so completely fused with it, that they don't experience it as a voice at all. They experience it as themselves. This is, I would say, the beginning of almost all human unhappiness, not the content of the voice, but the fact that we don't realize it is a voice, a stream of thought arising in the mind, and instead we take it to be who we are. And so today I want to look at this together quite closely, because underneath this constant mental noise, there is something else, something quiet, something that has been here all along, waiting patiently for you to notice it. We could call it presence, we could call it the present moment, and I want to show you practically how to find your way back to it, because it has never actually left, only your attention has wandered from it. Let us begin with a simple observation. Think of any moment of suffering in your life, not physical pain, but real psychological suffering, the kind that keeps you up at night, that weighs on you through the day. Now examine it honestly. Is this suffering ever actually caused by the present moment itself? Or is it always in some way connected to a thought about the past or a thought about the future? Notice this carefully. In this very moment, right now, as you sit or stand listening to these words, is there truly a problem? Not tomorrow's problem, not next month's problem, not the memory of last year's problem, but right now, in this actual instant. Often, if you look closely, you will find that the present moment itself is remarkably simple. It is only when the mind adds a thought, but what about tomorrow? But what if this happens again? But I still haven't recovered from what happened before, that suffering appears. The present moment, taken purely as it is, without the commentary, is almost always workable. It is the mental overlay, past and future, replayed endlessly in the form of thought, that creates the heaviness so many people carry every single day, largely without question, as though it were simply the price of being alive. Now, I want to make an important distinction here, because this is often misunderstood. I am not saying that time itself is an illusion in the practical sense. Clock time is useful, it is necessary. If you have somewhere to be tomorrow, you need to remember it, plan for it, take practical steps today to prepare for it. This is what I sometimes call clock time, the practical use of past and future for organizing life, learning from experience, setting a direction. There is nothing wrong with clock time. The problem arises with what I call psychological time, the habitual, compulsive dwelling in past and future as a place to live, rather than a tool to use. Psychological time is when the mind constantly drags you backward into old grievances, old identities, old wounds, replaying them as though they were still happening, or drags you forward into imagined future scenarios, rehearsing anxieties that haven't occurred and, in most cases, never will occur in the way the mind predicts. Notice, you can use time, practically checking a clock, planning a trip, without living in psychological time at all. The farmer plants a seed today with the future harvest in mind, and yet the farmer's hands right now are fully present in the soil. That is the difference. Practical use of time happens while consciousness remains anchored in the present. Psychological time happens when consciousness itself becomes lost, wandering, absent from the only moment life is actually offering. Let's look now at why this constant mental noise happens in the first place, because it isn't random, and understanding its mechanism takes away much of its power over you. The mind, and by mind I mean the thinking function, not intelligence itself, but the compulsive, habitual stream of thought, has over a very long time taken on a life of its own. It was designed as a tool, a magnificent tool for practical tasks, for problem solving, for language, for creativity. But somewhere along the way, most people stopped using the mind and instead became used by it. The thinking never stops. Even in moments when there is nothing to solve, nothing to plan, nothing to figure out, the mind continues generating thought, often unpleasant thought, often repetitive thought, as though thinking itself has become an addiction that runs independently of any actual need. Have you ever noticed how the mind seems almost uncomfortable with silence? Give it a quiet moment, an empty afternoon, a walk without a phone, and very quickly it will manufacture something to think about, a worry, a memory, a fantasy, anything, rather than simply resting in the stillness that is actually available. This compulsive thinking is what I mean when I speak of living in your head. It is not that thinking is bad, it is that unconscious, compulsive, unobserved thinking has taken over the role that presence, that awareness was meant to hold. There is another layer to this, something I call the pain body, and I think it's worth mentioning here because it explains why certain thoughts have such a strong pull on us, almost like gravity. Over the course of a life, unresolved emotional pain, old hurts, old griefs, old angers that were never fully faced, never fully felt, never fully released, accumulates as a kind of energy field within a person. This accumulated pain doesn't just sit quietly, it periodically becomes active, and when it does, it seeks thoughts that match its frequency, angry thoughts, fearful thoughts, self-pitying thoughts, because in a strange way, the pain body feeds on these thoughts, on the emotional charge they generate. This is why sometimes you may notice yourself thinking unusually negative thoughts, almost as though a switch has flipped, and it can be difficult to simply think your way out of it, because the thinking itself is being generated by the activated pain body, not the other way around. The way through this is not more thinking, not more analysis of why you feel this way, it is presence. It is bringing simple, direct attention to the feeling itself, in the body, without the story attached to it. This alone, done consistently, begins to loosen the grip that old pain has over your present moment experience. So how practically do we begin to step out of this constant mental activity and into the present moment? I want to offer you something very simple, something you can do right now without changing anything about your external circumstances. Bring your attention into your body, not thinking about your body, but feeling it from within the subtle sense of aliveness in your hands, in your feet, in your chest. Just for a moment, feel your hands. Don't look at them. Just feel the life within them, the faint tingling, the subtle energy that is there, that has always been there, usually completely ignored because attention is almost always captured by thought instead. This is a doorway into presence, because the body only exists in the present moment. The body has never once, not for a single instant, existed in the past or the future. Only the mind travels there. So when you bring attention into the body, you are quite literally anchoring your consciousness back into now. Another very simple practice, one I often point people toward, is the conscious breath. Not a special breathing technique, not counting or controlling the breath in any complicated way. Simply feel one breath fully from beginning to end. Feel the air entering, feel the slight pause, feel it leaving. This one conscious breath cannot happen in the past. It cannot happen in the future. It can only happen now. And in giving your full attention to it, even briefly, the compulsive stream of thinking naturally quiets, not because you fought it, not because you tried to suppress it, but because attention, which is a very limited resource, has simply been redirected. You cannot be fully present with your breath and fully lost in anxious thought at the same time. The two cannot occupy the same space. I want to speak now about something people often misunderstand when they first encounter this teaching, the idea of watching the mind or observing thought. This is different from stopping thought, and it's an important distinction. You do not need to fight your thinking, silence it by force, or judge yourself for having thoughts. In fact, trying to forcefully stop thinking usually generates more thinking, more internal struggle, more noise. Instead, try simply watching. The next time you notice you are thinking, and noticing that you are thinking is itself a form of presence, because there must be an awareness separate from the thought in order to observe it. Just watch it the way you might watch clouds moving across the sky, without needing to change their shape, without needing to hurry them along. Ask yourself quietly, what will my next thought be? And then wait, watching, alert. You may notice a brief gap, a pause, a moment of stillness before the next thought arrives. That gap, brief as it may be, is a taste of what I call the present moment, unclouded by thought. It may only last a second or two at first. That's fine. These small gaps, repeated often enough, over time, begin to widen. Presence, in this way, is not achieved through some dramatic transformation, but through many small returns, practiced patiently, again and again, throughout an ordinary day. There is something else I want to mention, because it often comes up at this point, the question of acceptance, or what I sometimes call surrender. This word is often misunderstood as passivity, as giving up, as resignation. That is not what I mean by it at all. Surrender, as I use the term, means the simple, honest acknowledgement of what is already here in this moment, without the added layer of inner resistance. Notice whatever is happening right now is already happening. Arguing with it internally, wishing it were different, resisting the present fact of it does not change the situation. It only adds a layer of suffering on top of the situation. This does not mean you cannot take action to change your circumstances. In fact, clear, effective action becomes far more available once the internal resistance is dropped, because energy that was being spent on inner conflict becomes available instead for practical response. Acceptance of the present moment is the foundation from which wise action arises. Resistance to the present moment is usually the foundation from which reactive, unconscious behavior arises. This is worth testing for yourself. In ordinary situations, waiting in a long line, sitting in traffic, dealing with an unexpected delay, notice how much of the discomfort in these moments comes from the situation itself and how much comes from the internal commentary about the situation. This shouldn't be happening. This is taking too long. Why does this always happen to me? Drop the commentary, even briefly, and observe what remains. Often, what remains is far more manageable than what the mind had built on top of it. I want to bring this back to something very ordinary, very practical, because presence is not reserved for meditation cushions or quiet retreats. It is available in washing a dish, in walking to your car, in listening to another person speak. Try this the next time you're doing something simple and repetitive, washing your hands, perhaps, or making a cup of tea. Instead of using that time to think about something else, as most people habitually do, bring your full attention to the actual physical experience of the task. Feel the water, notice the temperature, notice the sound. This is not a trivial exercise. Every ordinary moment reclaimed from compulsive thinking is a moment of freedom, a moment where you are not living in your head, rehearsing the past or the future, but living directly, immediately, in the only place life is actually taking place. I think it is worth acknowledging, honestly, that this is not a single technique you apply once and are finished with forever. The mind's habit of compulsive thinking, of psychological time, is old, very old, and it will continue to arise. The goal is not to eliminate thought or achieve some permanent, unbroken state of presence overnight. The goal is simply to notice more and more often when you have drifted into unconscious thinking, and to gently, without self-criticism, bring attention back to the present, back to the breath, back to the body, back to the simple physical reality of whatever you happen to be doing. Over time, this noticing becomes more frequent. The gaps of presence become wider, and something begins to shift, not necessarily in your circumstances, which may remain largely the same, but in the quality of consciousness you bring to those circumstances. And this ultimately is what determines the felt quality of a human life. Not what is happening, but the presence or the absence of presence brought to what is happening. So notice right now, as these words come to an end, what is actually here. Not the story about your day, not the plan for tomorrow, not the memory of yesterday, just this. The sound of your own breathing, the weight of your body, wherever you happen to be sitting or standing, the simple fact of being alive, right now, in this moment, which is the only moment that has ever actually existed for anyone. Everything else, every worry, every regret, every anticipation is thought arising in the present moment but pointing away from it. You do not have to follow it. You can, at any time, simply notice it and gently, without struggle, return your attention here. This returning, practiced patiently, moment by moment, is the entire path, not a destination reached once and kept forever, but a doorway available again and again, every single time you remember to walk through it